Hi, it's Sunday night. Welcome to section 3 of the course. I'm going to record this now and post it now so that you have it ready for Monday morning. It's going to be a fairly short PowerPoint and a short recording because the second half of content for this week, for this section, I'm going to do through Collaborate session that we have tomorrow at 6 o'clock. So I'm only covering half the content just to keep it a little more interactive and not to give you too much at once, since we are having two sections. So we're on section 3 of Moodle here. I've already posted the PowerPoint. You have the readings and you have the media sources. The media sources I'm commenting on anyway. You can always jump on and also add your commentary, but it's my responsibility until week 5, and then you start in week 6. So let's go to section 3 PowerPoint. This is posted, so I'm just talking to the slides, but not adding that much, and then you'll be able to browse the resources yourself. What I'm trying to do today is really just give you an overview and orientate you through the structure of these 3 classes that we're having, where we're going to look at the typology of these sections of the course. I'm just hesitating there because the heading is wrong, so I'm just checking whether I had the right PowerPoint. It should not say behavioral leadership theory, it should say trait leadership theories here. So I will actually correct the PowerPoint and upload it again, but for now I'm just going to keep recording. So, objectives. We are going to explore the overall history and typology of leadership theory, assess the usefulness of having a typology and explain to you what it is, and then begin a detailed examination of trait theory, which is the category 1. We have 4 categories in this typology. So on this recording, we are going to just tackle the first one. Tomorrow in the Collaborate session, I will tackle the second one, and then we will spend one full section of the course for the next 2, because they're a little heavier in terms of content, a little more complex. So, first of all, what's a typology? A typology is a way of classifying things. It's a way of putting things in categories. So why is it useful? Because I think you will see, and I'm just going to give you a heads up here and show you the course outline again. The 3 readings here are readings where you will notice the complexity of theories and a number of theories available. So that's how you're supposed to use these 3 articles, is really to give you a good overview of all the different sort of leadership styles, approaches, theories that have been sort of used in leadership generally, not just in education. So there's an awful lot of them. And the danger, I think, especially from me approaching this as an instructor, is that if we don't give you some sort of classification to start with, a classification that makes sense and enables you to put things in the right spot, you might actually get lost, particularly because we only have six weeks to do this. So that's the advantage of a typology. The disadvantage is that it's artificial. So it's a classification which I've come to, which is supported by some authors. If you look at the 3 texts, you will see that all 3 try and offer you some sort of typology. In some cases, the typology is aligned. In others, it's not completely aligned. It's going to be artificial because writers did not write or produce a theory, hoping to fit within these four sort of groups. It's later on that we sort of read them, interpret them, and then try and stick them in one of the categories. So these categories are, there's some osmosis. Some of the theories that we're going to see within the 4 categories can sometimes be placed in a different one depending on who's doing the interpretation. So it's not black and white. It's not, a final word on this. It's literally just a tool. It's a tool that will enable you, I think, to get into the material and get your head around all of the different theories that you're going to encounter, and give you an easy way to classify them, right? It's like you've got drawers on the desk, and it enables you to put them in the right drawer and then revisit them and then understand them better. So the typology I sort of offer you, suggest for you for the duration of the course is, the first one would be trait theories. And what's going to be a little bit confusing there is that trait theory is also a theory that you find within that category. So in the way I use it as a general term, is that all of these 4 or 3 theories in the first instance are theories that really have to do with personality traits. So inherent sort of features of your character. So instead of trait, you could say that inherent features of character. But a lot of people have classified all of these as being trait theories. And then within trait theories, you find trait leadership theory, great man theory, and charismatic leadership. Not that enormously different. But what is the common element of these? I've given to you in a sentence, a question: what type of person makes a good leader? And when theorists have focused on that question, then normally we're able to classify them within this trait theory. The second classification is behavioral theories. And there the question really that authors are generally focusing on is, what does a good leader do? It's not what are they inherently, but what do they do? And there we will look at 4 categories which you've probably encountered because they're used fairly regularly: autocratic leadership, democratic leadership, laissez-faire leadership, and bureaucratic leadership. Now you will notice laissez-faire leadership, it's one of those instances where there's some osmosis. Some people will actually classify it as power and influence theory, but I think for the purpose of this course, it's probably easier to leave it there and explain it there. The third category, this will be the next section, section 4 of the course. We will look at contingency theories. And really, if authors can be classified in that category, it's usually because we are answering the question, how does the situation influence good leadership? If we have an author that's trying to answer that question with their theory, it's normally a contingency theory. So it's really a triangular. It's about the person, about the decisions they make, and about the context in which they find themselves. This is how you're going to always be able to try and identify a contingency theory. It really is about 3 elements in a triangular relationship. And there I've given you some examples that we will look at in the next section. And the last section is the theories of leadership that are normally sort of coined or termed or described as power and influence theory. So the main questions there for these authors is, what is the source of the leader's power? So how are they reflecting on power, and how are they trying to assert themselves with people that they supervise? And again, there we have 4 different examples, 3 being very popular. So you're going to hear a lot about servant leadership, transactional leadership, and transformational leadership. Now, in the title, I talk about historical. It's not as though we start with trait theory and then we've linearly gone through the time and then moved on to behavioral theory, contingency theory, and power and influence theories. But certainly from the first one, trait theory is something you're going to see very prevalent in the 18th century and in history generally before that. And power and influence theories have become much more popular in the end of 20th century, beginning of 21st century. And I would tell you right away now that really most of what you're going to find in literature really focuses on either transactional leadership or transformational leadership. And in section 5, we will look at the subtle difference between the 2 and how we can compare them and gauge them. Okay, so there you are. You have the post typology, the 4 categories. I think you'll be able to, again, keep an open mind. In the text that you will look at in this section, you will see that the typology varies depending on author to author. But I think I'm offering you this as a simple guide, as a tool, and I think it will be helpful for the rest of the course. So if we accept this typology and then we use it as a way of structuring the next 3 lessons, in this section we're going to look at trait theory. I'm going to do that right away and give you some resources and explain them generally. They're not very complicated. I'm not going to spend much more than 10 minutes on them, and then let you explore them together. In the collaborate session, I will go into behavioral theories tomorrow at 6 o'clock when we meet on Monday. So trait theories. Let me just go to the next slide. Okay, so trait leadership theories proper, and you have a text by Flino. I want to apologize as well about the fact that the reference is 2006. You've had me introduction to research. I argue that if something is older than 10 years old, flush it. In leadership, ideas don't change that much over time, and you will find people using literature that's a little older. because people are so focused on this school of thoughts and school of leadership approaches that they do tend to recycle, texts that are a little older. Also, usually you'll see that it's actually purely theoretical. So a lot of authors approach this not from a data collection point of view. They actually just put forward a theory. They sort of coin a theory and put it forward and describe it. So the fact that the data hasn't changed and is not an effort at data analysis means that really all the text remain fairly usable, because there's not been an abundance of data that has been actually produced to sort of reframe the theory. So if you're interested in trait leadership theory itself, not as a category but as a type of leadership, you can have a look at the Freno article. You got a YouTube video there as well, which actually gives you a comparison and the contrast between trait theory leadership as a category as well and behavior theories, which we're going to look at in the Collaborate session. How do we describe trait leadership theory? Well, again, trait, it's about a feature, an inherent feature of your personality. So trait leadership theory tends to say that you need to have certain personality features, certain aspects of your personality in order to be able to be a good leader. And different authors have tried in different ways to list the sort of traits that are essential. And obviously there's not always agreement, and authors differ in what they see as being, the essential traits that are required to be a good leader. Great man theory goes even a little further and actually says basically that you're born a leader. So this has been very, very popular historically, for certainly up to the beginning of the 20th century and really up to the Second World War, where it started to be challenged there. But for a very long time, people really had this feeling that you had to just be born with. So it goes with the trait leadership theory in a way, because it's about certain features of your personality, but it goes further in saying you can't even learn them, you're literally born with them. And that really what makes a good leader is a sort of coincidence when those features align and a person has all of the right assets. Now, you may be a bit dismissive of this, but I think you will need in this section to think, to what extent do we still perpetuate this? Even if we don't believe it, we actually subconsciously perpetuate it. Think of all the times when we look at politicians, we look at people in our society, directors of companies, and we say, wow, this is an exceptional person. So really, when we are saying it's an exceptional person, often we don't actually deconstruct and unpack this. We don't say it's an exceptional leader reflecting on what he's doing. We actually usually tend to say it's just an accident of sort of nature, that person just has the right qualities. So you will see this a lot. Unfortunately, we see this a lot in education, and we do tend to say, oh, that person is just born to be a principal. And when you use things like instinctively, be careful with that word, instinctively. What does that mean? That means the person's not thinking, is not reflecting. Therefore, we're falling back on great man theory. We're assuming that they were just born like that, and they don't even think of how they make decisions. They actually just make them. Charismatic leadership, as I said, I'm not spending much time on this section because really you're not going to find an awful lot of difference between the three. Charismatic leadership really put maybe more of a focus on, in terms of the trait, I'm saying it's not just any aspect of the personality. It's really about communication, charisma. Think about what charisma means. So communication, ability to be almost seductive with people, ability to be able to appeal to people's stance, and usually that's through communication. So again, it seems old, it seems dated, it seems like, you might think this is really, you might dismiss it and think, how can really anyone still in 2019 be looking at this? But for example, I would invite you to look at articles and press around the election of the French president. I think he's been in power 2 years now, Macron. Well, if you look at even fairly sort of in-depth coverage at the time, we're really falling back on this notion of charismatic leadership. he's gonna win, and he needs, he deserves to win because he's a charismatic leader, because he talks well, because he can manipulate a room, because he walks in a room and there's a certain magic. All of these things, are not explicitly saying charismatic leadership, but they're all words and terminology that leads us back to this notion of charismatic leadership. Okay, so in the forum for this week, I've asked you to start looking at the pros and cons. The more you engage in this, because there are lots of pros and cons, the more you are going to be ready to do your assignment when you get to describe experiences you've had if you pick trait leadership. So it's a collaborative exercise for the whole class, but it will actually help you start getting in depth into your analysis when you get to the assignment and you're describing for me a couple of leadership styles, which you've seen in practice, and that you again assess in terms of pros and cons within context. Okay, that's it for tonight. You've got the same references that you have in section 3. So you've got a good overview of how we're doing this, of the structure for the next 3 sections. You have a first little bite here that enables you to start that reflection, enables you to start posting things on the forum 3, and then tomorrow night we will do the behavioral category, the behavioral in section 2 of the typology. I'll describe the 4, and then we will do it interactively and see the pros and cons there. So I wish you a good evening, and I will post this right now. Again, I'll change the title of the slide before I post it, so there's no confusion. Have a good night.